This is not a bad crowd to come greet a gator. You can boo. But today we're all here because we are all Americans. And we are here because we are fighting for the future of the party of Lincoln and of Reagan. And we are here because someone's got to turn that plane off so I can talk a little louder. And we are here because we are fighting for the future of the conservative movement. In 1980, America faced some incredible challenges. Jimmy Carter had been a terrible president. America felt weak in the world. Our economy was flattened out. People had lost their hope in the American dream. And then we elected Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan didn't just turn the country around, he literally inspired a generation. It is not an exaggeration to say that an entire generation of people involved in politics today found their core principles because they grew up in the era of Reagan. But the power of Reagan was not Reagan himself as a person, although he was a phenomenal man. It was his beliefs, his principles in limited government and in free enterprise and in a strong national defense. But most important of all, he believed in the American idea, in what America meant. And even if you didn't disagree with him, even if you didn't agree with him on one issue or another, millions of Americans were inspired. Reagan tried to lift us up by appealing to our hopes and dreams. He didn't try to take advantage of our fears and anxieties. Well, here we are today, 36 years later, at a very similar time. America feels weaker in the world. Our economy is flattened, and we once again have a bad president. The worst president we have had since Jimmy Carter. And Americans are fearful, and Americans are anxious, and the American dream that defines us seems to be slipping away. People work harder than they've ever worked, and they can't seem to get ahead. People are making extraordinary sacrifices, and that's not enough. They go to school, they borrow thousands of dollars to go to school, they graduate, and they have a loan and a degree that didn't lead to a job. There is a lot of anxiety in the land, and it's only been made worse by the headlines from around the world. And we must then choose. Will we embrace the principles of limited government and free enterprise? And will we appeal to people's hopes and dreams? Or will we try to take advantage of their fears and their anxieties? I am passionate about this campaign now more than ever because unfortunately today, there are a significant number of our fellow Americans in the Republican Party who have chosen, at least for the moment, to support someone who is appealing to their fears and to their anxieties. And they have a right to be fearful and anxious. But what no one has a right to do is to try to take advantage of that, to carry out the most extensive con job in American political history. My campaign has been built on my ideas for the future. We are going to talk about those today. But before we get to that future, we must work through the present. And at the present moment, many of us know someone who is supporting Donald Trump. And that someone needs to understand what it is they are supporting. And the best way to understand what you're going to do in the future is to see what you've done in the past. For example, Donald Trump has made a career out of taking advantage of people's fears, anxieties, and worries. Years ago, Donald Trump began something called Trump University. It was not a real university. They didn't have a football team, for example. But he called it that. And if you watch the promotional video, it is what really got me fired up. In this promotional video, Donald Trump says the following. He says, we are going to hire the best people. We are going to bring in the smartest people. And I'm going to teach you how to win. And you're going to get tired of winning. And all you're going to do is be successful. And so people signed up for this course. People gave him money, not a vote. They gave him $10,000. And then when they got there, they were told, listen, if you want to make big money, just want to make sure that's not Trump's plane. It's called Air Force One. And so people signed up and they said, if you want to make big money, you got to pay for the $35,000 course, and they did. and they got nothing. You know what you got when you graduated Trump University? A picture with a cardboard cutout of Donald Trump. Now that is a bad business practice, but it runs deeper than that. That is exactly what he is trying to do to American voters now. He's saying to them, elect me president. I'm going to be the tough guy. Donald Trump is not a tough guy. His whole life, he's had it given to him. He's had it easy. He inherited over $100 million. There's nothing wrong with that, but don't tell me you're a tough guy. He tells them, I'm going to be tough on illegal immigration, but he hires illegal immigrants to work on Trump Towers. He tells them, he was doing this yesterday in Alabama, I'm going to fight for the American worker. He tries to beat up on this visa program that brings workers from overseas. Guess who's a big user of that visa program? Donald Trump. Instead of hiring Americans to work at his hotels, he brings people in from other countries who, by the way, are doing the jobs my parents raised my family doing. On issue after issue, what he's saying to people isn't true. It doesn't match his record. And yet somehow it's gotten to this point. It's gotten too far. It's called a con job. And we are not going to allow a con artist to take control of the party of Lincoln and Reagan. Well, he can't win either. That's the other big problem. He's unelectable now. He refused to criticize the Ku Klux Klan. He's now been given 3 interviews. This morning on the Today Show, he blamed it on a bad earpiece, that he couldn't hear the question. I don't care how bad the earpiece is, Ku Klux Klan comes through pretty clearly, and he refuses to criticize it. How are we going to elect, how can someone like that be our nominee? How can the nominee of the Republican Party, of the party of Lincoln, the party of Reagan, the party of hope, and the party of optimism nominate someone who refuses to criticize the Ku Klux Klan or distance himself from an avowed racist like David Duke? And we can't lose this election. The media knows Donald Trump can't win. And that is why they are giving him a pass. Do you think they don't know all these things about his business record? You think they don't know all these stories? You know what they're waiting for? They're waiting for him to be the nominee, which is not going to happen, but they're waiting for that so they can descend on him like the hounds of hell. They will shred him to pieces, and then they will get Hillary Clinton elected, which is what many of them want anyways. And we cannot allow Hillary Clinton to be elected. Hillary Clinton will follow the same policies that Barack Obama has put in place. And if we stay on the road we are on right now, we are going to be the first Americans that leave their children worse off than themselves. Hillary Clinton is someone that if she's elected president may need to pardon herself after putting classified information on her email server. And Hillary Clinton is someone who's disqualified from being commander-in-chief. Because she lied to the families of those victims in Benghazi. And anyone who does that can never be the commander-in-chief of the United States of America. We have a chance in this election to go in a different direction from the one we're headed now. And it is the direction that I'm offering you. It is the direction that I ask you to vote for. It is not one that asks you to act on your fears and on your anxieties, for I know that they are real. It is a direction that asks you to embrace your hopes and your dreams for a better future. It is a direction that says that we, when I am president, are going to re-embrace the Constitution of the United States. When I'm president, for the first time in 8 years, you'll have a president that defends your First Amendment right to live out the teachings of your faith. For the first time in 8 years, you'll have a president that defends your Second Amendment right to protect yourself and your family. If you vote for me, you'll have a president that understands, because of 8 years that I spent in Florida, 2 of them as Speaker of the Florida House, that the 10th Amendment is right. Government, if it has power, it belongs at the state level, not in Washington, D.C. You will have a president that believes in free enterprise, not because I inherited money, not because I'm wealthy, but because my dad was a bartender and my mother was a maid. And the reason why they had jobs is because free enterprise works. Free enterprise is the only economic model in the history of the world where you are judged on your merit and on your work, not on your connections, not on your last name. It is the only economic model in the history of the world where you can make poor people richer and you don't have to make rich people poorer, where you can lift everybody up and not tear anyone down. And that's why, as a candidate, I have offered serious ideas and serious proposals. Unlike Donald Trump, who won't tell you where he stands on these issues, because he doesn't care where he stands on these issues. To him, it's we'll figure it out when we get there. We cannot elect the dog that caught the car. Get it? Think about it. The dog is always barking at the car. What are you going to do when you catch that car? We can't risk it. And I ask you to go on our website, marcorubio.com. You'll see I have a serious plan, a real one, to fix our tax code, to roll back out of control regulations, to save Social Security and Medicare, to balance our budget, to fully utilize all of our energy resources. And unlike Donald Trump, my plan on healthcare is a lot more than just getting rid of the lines around the states. I offer you a real plan to repeal and replace Obamacare once and for all. After 8 years of weakness, if you elect me president, you're going to have a real commander-in-chief once again. You're not going to have someone like Donald Trump who thinks the Nuclear Triad is a punk rock band from the 80s. You're going to have someone that understands how dangerous the world has become. North Korea is governed by a lunatic with access to nuclear weapons. The Chinese Communist government is taking over the South China Sea, rapidly building up their militaries, and oh, by the way, they also make Donald Trump suits and ties in China. If he was interested in bringing back American jobs, he can start this very morning by announcing that every product that says Donald Trump on it will be made in America. I challenge him to do that. The world is dangerous with Vladimir Putin, who he seems to have a bromance with. Vladimir Putin is a thug, and he's sowing instability in Europe and in the Middle East. A world where Iran is going to get $100 billion, which they're going to use, not to build hospitals, not to build orphanages, but to acquire a nuclear weapon of their own. A world where radical Islamic terrorists are spreading throughout the world. And in the face of all this danger, we have a president that is gutting our military. After Barack Obama, we will be left with the smallest army since the end of World War II. After Barack Obama, we will be left with the smallest Navy in a century. And after Barack Obama, we will be left with the smallest Air Force in our history. In the face of all this danger, we are recklessly cutting our military. And it isn't just unsafe, it's unfair to our men and women in uniform. Defense spending is not the reason why we have a national debt. And that is why, when I am President of the United States, we will undertake a Reagan-style rebuilding of the United States military. When I'm President of the United States, we will have a real war on terror. We don't want war, we want peace. But in order to achieve peace, you must defeat the enemies of peace. ISIS is an enemy of peace, and they will be defeated. The best intelligence agencies in the world will find them. Our rebuilt military will destroy them. And if we capture any of these ISIS killers alive, they don't have the right to remain silent. They're not getting a court hearing in Manhattan. They're not coming to a federal prison in Tennessee. They're going to Guantanamo. When I'm President of the United States, we will have a foreign policy of moral clarity, which means our allies will know that we are their allies. Perhaps no ally has been more mistreated under this president than the state of Israel. Israel is the only pro-American, free enterprise democracy in the entire Middle East. And today they're being threatened from all sides. At the debate the other night and then weeks leading up to it, Donald Trump said that he's not going to take sides when it comes to Israel. He wants to be impartial. I'm taking sides when it comes to Israel. I'm on Israel's side. And that is why on my first day in office, I will cancel Barack Obama's deal with Iran. When I'm president, we're going to take care of our veterans again. If you are a veteran, will you raise your hand so we can thank you? We're not taking care of our veterans. I think Lamar would tell you the same as me. A lot of the calls to our office these days are a veteran that's fighting and haggling with the VA system. I've seen this firsthand, not just in my office. My brother's a veteran. He was a 7th Special Forces Green Beret in the Army from 1968 to 1971. At the same time as Donald Trump was avoiding the draft because he said he got hurt playing squash. It's a violent game, right? My brother jumped out of an airplane one day on a training mission. He landed badly, he knocked out his teeth. And so every few years, he has to fill a claim with the VA. And every few years, it's a nightmare. They basically treat him like if they're doing him a favor, as opposed to the other way around. Our veterans did us the favor. They took care of us. Now we need to take care of them. There are good people at the VA. There are good people at the VA. And they work really hard and they care about our veterans. And we thank them for their service. But there are people there that are not doing a good job. The other day in USA Today, the headline said that calls to the VA suicide hotline went to voicemail. Someone needs to be held accountable. When I'm president, they will. If you are not doing a good job at the VA or any agency for that matter, when I'm president, you will be fired from your job. And when I'm president, those VA benefits will belong to you, the veterans. You will be able to take your VA benefits to any hospital or any doctor that you want to go to. Last night I was in Virginia. I was reminded of something that I want to bring up. Many of our veterans do not stop serving when they come home. If you go to any fire station in America, if you go to any police department, you're going to see veterans. We're reminded of that yesterday because in Virginia, 2 nights ago, a young Marine reservist, she was on her first day on the job, and she was shot and killed. And I am so tired of all these articles about how bad the police is. Let me tell you, I want to thank them today. I thank God for our police officers and for our firefighters. So, I'm going to wrap this up for 2 reasons. Number 1, we have 4 other rallies today. And number 2, you may not be able to tell, but this is not my normal voice. What's the name of that singer with a deep voice? You know what I'm talking about. Barry White, yeah. Trying to get my Barry White voice going here. We've been working hard for you. And if it means that by the end of tonight I don't have a voice and I have to whisper how strongly I feel about the future of our country, I'm willing to do it. You know, because our veterans and so many others have given up way much more than just their voice for one day. I've gotten a lot of emails and phone calls and texts after Thursday night's debate. A lot of people saying, thank you for finally standing up to the bully. Thank you. He's not a bully. He's a liberal, he's a Democrat. That's not a bully. He's just a big talker and a yapper and a guy who's been able to manipulate the media and get a lot of attention. And he's a good con man. He's done a good job of convincing people that he, a guy who has spent his life cheating the little guy, is somehow the champion for the little guy. But I'm not fighting for me. I'm not standing up for myself. I want you to understand, I'm standing up, I'm trying to stand up for you. Yeah. Because this election is no normal election. Every election is important in this republic. But this election is different than most elections. Most elections are a choice between political parties. Most elections are a choice between candidates or names on a ballot. I believe with all my heart this election is a referendum. And what we are being asked to decide is not simply what party wins or what candidate wins. This is not a popularity contest. It shouldn't be. This cannot be one of those times where you marry, like, example, marrying someone who your parents hate just to get back at them. But unfortunately, when you elect a president, you can't get divorced for at least 4 years. What's at stake here is our very identity as a nation and as a people. I know what America has been for over 2 centuries. It has been an exceptional land. You hear that all the time. People say that America is the greatest country in the world. We say it so often that sometimes we take it for granted. And so maybe I want to take a moment to remind you of what it is that makes us great. And I want to tell you the story of my own life. The reason why I know America's special is because I've lived it, as you have. This is not just a country I was born in. America is literally the nation that changed the history of my family. I don't come from a family of wealth and privilege. My mother was one of 7 girls born in rural Cuba. Her father was disabled by polio when he was just 6 years old. He struggled to provide for his 7 daughters. You can imagine how hard it must have been for a disabled man in rural Cuba, in a developing country, at the turn of the last century, in the early 30s and 40s, to provide for his girls. There was no welfare, there was no food stamps, there was no government assistance. If you didn't work, you didn't eat. My father, believe it or not, had it even harder. He lived in Havana, but his mother died when he was 4 days shy of his 9th birthday, which meant he couldn't go to school anymore. If he wanted to eat, he had to go work. My father stopped going to school when he was 9, and he would work for the next 70 years of his life. My parents arrived in this country in 1956. They had nothing. They barely spoke any English. The first words my father learned were, "I'm looking for work," or "I'm looking for a job." They had no money, no education, no connections. They had nothing. And let me tell you, their first years here were very difficult. We didn't know that growing up, but years later, as I prepared to write my book and I was able to talk to my mother and my relatives, I learned that my parents were incredibly discouraged when they got here. Life was really, really hard. They even thought that maybe they made a mistake. They thought about going back to Cuba. I'm very glad they did not. It is what happened next. It is because of what happened next that I know how special America is. My father was just working as a bartender. He finally found a job as a bartender on Miami Beach. And working as a bartender, less than 10 years after they came here with nothing, my parents bought a home in a safe and stable neighborhood. The years would go by. But it wasn't in Hialeah. It was right by the Orange Bowl, in case you wondered. I have nothing against Hialeah. I can't believe Hialeah is in town. It's a city in Miami. Very, very Cuban, very Republican, by the way. And my parents, years would go by. My parents never became rich people. You never would have heard about them had I not run for office. But I always tell people my parents were incredibly successful people, because after arriving here with nothing, working as a bartender and as a maid, they were able to retire with dignity and with security. And the most important thing of all for them, the reason why they knew their life mattered, is because after years of sacrifice and hard work, they lived to see all 4 of their children live a life better than their own. Now here's, if that was just my story, you'd say, what an incredible story of that family. People all the time say as an inspirational personal story. I appreciate you saying that. But my story's not my story. My story's our story. The story I just described is the story of America. You see, most of you I'm meeting for the first time. I don't know your personal stories in detail, but I know enough about you and I know enough about America to say this. Here in this country, we are all just a generation or two removed from a story not unlike the one I just told. As Americans, we are all just a generation or two removed from someone. We are all just a generation or two removed from someone who made our future the purpose of their lives. Maybe it was your grandparents that did that for your parents. Maybe it was your father who worked 2 jobs, or your mother who made sacrifices so you could have the future they once wanted for themselves. Or maybe I'm describing you now. Maybe you're that father that works all night and goes to school during the day so you can find a better job and a better future. Maybe you're that single mother who cleans the hotel rooms during the day so that her kids can one day be anything they want. This is who we are. And why that is different is because in almost every society on earth, your future depends almost entirely on who you come from, on what your parents did, but not here. In America, we always have believed that everyone has a God-given right to go as far as their talent and their work will take them. What you've achieved, what my family achieved, what your parents did for you, what my parents did for me, it has a name. It's called the American Dream. And the American Dream is not about how much money you make. And the American Dream is not about how many buildings have your name on it. And the American Dream is not about how many things you own on the day you die. The American Dream is about being able to decide what kind of life you want to live and have the opportunity to actually achieve it. If we ever lose the American dream, we'll stop being a special country. We'll still be a rich country, we'll still be a powerful one and an important one, but we will no longer be a special one. Every country in the world has rich people. We celebrate success. But few countries, if any, in human history have had so many millions of people who never achieve fame or wealth, but achieve happiness nonetheless. The American dream is not dead, but it is in trouble. It's in trouble because the American dream has never been automatic. It didn't happen on its own. The American dream was possible, and America's a special country because for over 2 centuries, each generation before us did what needed to be done. For over 2 centuries, each generation before us confronted their problems and solved them. Each generation before us embraced their opportunities. For over 2 centuries, we have been a nation where parents have always left their children better off, and where each generation left the next with a better country and a better life. Now the time has come for this generation to do its part. And I'm asking you for your vote, because if you elect me president, this generation will do its part. If you elect me president, you will not agree with everything I do. For example, when we play Tennessee, you're not going to be happy with some of my tweets. But here's what I can tell you. I will never divide you against each other on purpose. I will never ask you to hate one group of Americans so I can win an election. I will work every day on behalf of all Americans, even the ones that don't agree with me. Because if you want to be the President of the United States, then you must be willing to love all of the American people, even the ones that don't love you back. If you elect me president, I will work every day to keep you and your family safe, for it is the most important thing the federal government does. If you elect me president, I will work every single day as hard as I can to ensure that the American dream doesn't just survive, but it expands and reaches more people than ever before. That's why I'm asking you for your vote. Because if you elect me, we are going to do what needs to be done. We are going to re-embrace the principles that made us great, but we will apply them to the unique challenges of the 21st century. And I don't today appeal to your fears and your anger. I know you're angry and frustrated. You should be. Politics and politicians and government have failed you for decades in both parties. But anger won't solve our problems. We must get to work now to solve our problems, and we will when I'm president. And I want you to know, as difficult as things may seem today, I want you to know what history will say of us if we do what needs to be done. Here's what history will say of this generation of Americans. It will say that we lived in the early years of this new century in a very difficult time. The world was changing, the jobs we once relied on disappearing, more competition globally than ever before. The world was unsafe. And after 8 years of Barack Obama, America almost got it wrong. We almost lost the greatest nation on earth. But then in 2016, we remembered who we were. In 2016, we remembered what America truly was. And like the generations before us, we confronted our challenges. We embraced our opportunities. And when our work was done, we became the generation that didn't just save the American dream, we expanded it. And our children became the freest and the most prosperous Americans that ever lived. And the 21st century was better than the 20th century. It became a new American century. We have time to get it right, and so that is why I ask you one more time for your vote. And I ask you to go out and other people to vote for me. Friends don't let friends vote for people under FBI investigation. Like, friends don't let friends vote for socialists like Bernie Sanders. And friends don't let friends vote for con artists. Vote for me. If you vote for me, when I am your president, we will do what needs to be done, and we are going to leave for our children what our parents left for us, what Americans always leave their children, the single greatest nation in the history of all of mankind. Thank you. God bless you. I need your help. Thank you.